everybody. I hope you all had a great day so far. It's been I missed yesterday just because I had to work late, but back at it now. Pull up Fauna for scene and go ahead and get started. First up, we need to try and create a texture 2D array. And it's not too difficult to do, but I want to go ahead and create some some textures to actually use, and yeah, these aren't going to look the best right now, but I'm just going to create some simple checkerboard textures here. Make one for dirt and one for stone. Over here, but a little darker. And then I'm using the GIMP here, and you just go to render, pattern, checkerboard. I have 60 or 32. Let's go up 64. That should be fine. And obviously this will tile. So if I export, I'm gonna go to the game folder. So I'll just place it right into the mod folder, stream the assets, mods, test content, and so I'll just call this one dirt board. Okay, and now let's just do this again, except I'll make this gray and this will be stone. I just want to have something here, and it's good that it's geometric, even though it won't look that great right now. It will allow us to make sure that the textures are set up correctly. For the checkerboard, export it again. Stone checkerboard. At some point, we'll have to get actual great, good-looking textures. Okay, so we're done with this, so we can close it. Alright, and then here, well, I guess first let's set up the two block prototypes to actually use these images. This even shows up in Visual Studio Code. So we would go to the block prototypes, and this color is not needed anymore, so I can go ahead and just change this to texture. And the way we load it is S content. Actually, it wouldn't be in this folder, so we'll move that around because it needs to be added to an asset bundle. That's what this is, test content, and I'll just call this dirt checkerboard. Alright, and so if we go back into Unity, where do I don't really have like mod assets somewhere. I guess I should create another folder for that. Because it's not going to go in the streaming assets. How this would work is that in the final game, the mod author would have like a separate Unity project where they'd create these asset bundles and then they'd be distributed with in these mod folders. Just like this for now. If I go back to test content and I move out, Alright, so texture type. A default shape is 2D. Not sure why I thought it was a cube. RGB is fine because it's a color texture, not data texture. Right, move maps, probably okay. And we want it repeat and bilinear for this. Okay. And now to add it to an asset bundle, we just get down here and add it to test content. And I should have the asset bundle. What's it called? The asset bundle browser. And using this, we can go ahead and build the asset bundles. A while since we've done this, huh? If you're wondering, this asset bundle browser is not included by default in Unity, even though it's actually made by the Unity developers. It's just an asset bundle that you pick up in the store. Okay, well maybe it's not up to date. Yeah, it's not gonna take me to it because for some reason, right, try to double click on this to bring up the error. It doesn't work on collections objects. A little annoying. Okay, so how did I fix this? I had an old file that this asset bundle creator, and I guess I'll just rebuild it for now, or re-enable it since the browser is not working. Yes, probably the newest Unity version set up. So I want to go here and set bundles. Oh, did it? Okay, it looks like it actually did work, but it's not named how we'd want. Okay, you can't really tell. This content, not that. Oh, that's not that helpful, is it? Oh, this is what would actually hold the information. Okay, so it does have the images, so everything got created correctly, but for some reason, I don't know, Unity, something with the interface is messed up with the asset bundle browser. Okay, so we can go back to assets and streaming assets and just copy that here. Okay, and now the new test content with the texture should be loaded. The game is still gonna complain that we don't have a height map. I think let's actually try and play it and see what happens. No value given for our start height map, so I'm just going to go ahead and set the texture to the height map for now. The final game, probably if you don't specify a height map, it will just use some flat white texture, but don't want to have to worry about that contingent right now. Oh, I spelled that wrong, didn't I? Still wrong. Okay. Let's just see if it will let us load into the game. On load exception, unable to load the checkboard, database key is taken. Okay, and then prefab has multiple transform components. I don't know what this is talking about. This capsule? Not even get created. Okay, and Unity just froze. Okay, 1 second, let me load it back up. That is strange. I guess that the asset bundle did not build correctly after all. So I'll just try and build it using my little menu widget or whatever you call it. Okay, that was quick. And so what is it? We can look here. So it's assets, build, asset bundles. The only problem with this one is it doesn't tell you when it's done, so you just kind of have to wait until you can actually interact with the editor. Maybe they've changed that, I don't know. Okay, well no errors that time, so leave this folder open. I could just grab this. Okay, so I'm gonna load it again, see what happens. Okay, so we didn't get a strange capsule. I have no idea what was going on there. But it is saying that unable to load asset, checkable database queue is already taken. So I'm trying to why that would happen. Oh, well, that shouldn't really matter, but is it because this should be okay if it loads it twice? I mean, because the game is supposed to know that these are using the same texture and not to actually try to load it twice. Maybe it doesn't. That's bugged. Look at this load asset. Asset. Close some up our editor window. And the master asset loader, that's what it's for. So it gets a request and it calls this function. Okay, and then start request. This is what I'm trying to see. So what is going on here? Start request. Tries to get the asset key, and then if the loader is ready, then it stores it already, but okay, so it like, yeah, if this already exists, then it should just not even do anything. I don't know. Yeah. mistake on my part. What is this start request called? Why is it? I should see when is this called. Basically, if the asset loader exists already, then it doesn't matter if it's ready, it should just add another name in the database. Well, used the bundle path and the asset name bundle. Yeah, so this is like a unique thing per asset. So why would there be multiple names in the database for this? Because it only would ever... Oh, because this is... Should this be... I'm trying to look through my old code and code it, but it seems like some of this is a little silly. Okay, so the reason that there's a list here is because it's trying to put every name in the database that this asset is referred to in here, but name in the database is just the asset key, so that's unique to the asset, so it never should have anything else as far as I can tell. I think all this does is like add the name in the database, this, so is that different? Yeah, so this is wrong. It should do the asset name. It should add the asset name in database, not the asset key. This is what it should save this asset under. Yeah, this is what I was looking for. Because that's what happens here, but for some reason I just messed this up. And then it shouldn't ever store the asset here. Because just if it already exists, then this would be called... Oh, I see. Okay, so yeah, this is checking for duplicates, but I mean it's okay if there's a duplicate because we would just want to use the same thing. Right, and this the name and database is not gonna have set to. What is this set to? Asset key, and that's the mod name plus the asset path in the table of contents. Yeah, so if this is the same, it just wants the same asset. So I'm trying to figure out why we'd ever want to throw this error. Oh, I've lost. Okay, so I'm trying to think of how this could ever cause any issues. I don't really think of anything, because if the mods refer to the same file, then I'd want the same thing. So the game should just see, oh, well, it's already loading, so we don't need to do it again. Okay. I think that's the reason that this was happening, because like if the asset loader is already done, then we would want to store it here. Like we want to store it in the final assets, but if it's not done, then we would just add the name here. Okay, so I see what I was doing, but I want to check for copies. I'm just gonna comment this out because I don't think it's neat. This if there's a duplicate, then we just don't do anything. Now I think this should actually go for the requests, because there could be some weird thing where the letter's ready at this point and then called, and that creates a problems. Load everything first and then handle requests. That seems fine. Okay, so let's actually accidentally left this running the whole time. Not a huge deal, except it just slows start timed down. Perfect. Okay, yeah, because we haven't done this, finished writing this, but we got through the asset loading fine. Dirt checkerboard, dirt checkerboard, and stone and stone. Starts loading the dirt checkerboard. Okay, and then here it just handles the request for the stone checkerboard, but doesn't actually start loading the asset because it's already been loaded. So yeah, I think this is all fine. Yeah, because it's only loading these assets once. Happy with that. Not really sure what I was trying to prevent with that error, but some of that code is really old because we used it back in the test game, so could have been from that. Okay, so the error that we're dealing with now is just because this file's not done. Map is null, so I should go ahead and create that while I remember. Same with the texture map. Throat dries just a second. Alright, much better. Okay, so some textures. Remember where I left off before? Okay, so here, yeah, we're storing each texture. Yeah, the textures are the same. Then we just get the index from it. Okay, so here's where we actually would create the texture. And there's a few more things we need to worry about. So again, this is Cat-like Coding. It's a really great tutorial website, and we're going to be handling rendering our terrain shader about the same, so I'm just going to go ahead and use it as a reference. But one thing about texture arrays is that the textures all have to have the same like width and height. So, and format. So I'm going to go ahead and allow the mod author to specify that, or the, yeah, it would need to be the main or the framework mod is what I call it, because that's what all the content mods try to create things for. It'd be nice. Oh, so one issue I can see now is that, say, a content mod wanted to provide this for multiple mods, then they might have to have different size textures depending on what the framework mod specified, but that would be like, I don't know, loading different things for different mods, so I'm not worried about that just yet. So what we need to do is just enable contents. I'll add another entry here for board texture width, board texture height, and I'll see if we need anything else. I'm not sure. So again, if we look here, the first thing we need to do is create the new texture array. Or if I need to create this, or if they just did that for, oh, but let's just start off by creating the texture 2D array. So the width would be the vid framework table of contents, your width, and I think the height can just be 1 because we're not going to have a 3D texture. The depth might actually refer to the... Oh no, the depth is the array depth, okay. So that would be the num textures, texture format, whole bunch. I wonder if we should just... This isn't a big deal because since all these textures are going to have to be loaded through Unity, it'll be easy for the mod authors to convert to this. So maybe we should just like require a certain one. In fact, what is our 2 textures that we're using right now? What is the format, I should say? Oh, it's auto. Let me define it. It does depend. Those RGB 24-bit, yeah, that's what I would have thought. Or we'll just code that in now. We can always change it if we need to, and yeah, we'll go ahead and generate bitmaps. It's a terrain. Okay. So right now we have a hash set of these textures, but they're not really ordered by layer. So I guess we will need to have just a normal array of textures, not a texture 2D array. Then we'll just loop through our texture map. For texture map, then Textures. I don't really care about the key, we only care about this value, so I'll just change this to texture map values. So it's texture index equals texture. Now we've just converted the values in here to array just to make things easier for the next step. For texture. So now we have to do we also need to set these because they're not in the constructor. And instead of copying from the texture, I think I'll just set these myself. Oh, I don't know, maybe, well, if we ever want to, we can always change this, but not for the whole. That 1 right now, so I'll just set that to 1. Filter mode bilinear, and the wrap mode is definitely wrap because they need to, or repeat, because they need to be tiling. So I could see us changing this and also the filter mode, or allow mod authors to set that, but I'm not gonna worry about adding too much stuff until we actually need it. I guess I should also make sure that these widths and heights are also not 0 and that they're a power of 2. Also, num zeros can't be, or num textures can't be 0. Okay, and I'm gonna start using enumerations because we need to at some point change all these strings to some type of enumeration like we've done with the placing errors, because right now we can't localize them at all. Okay, well it's not set up. Okay, so we'll just stick with the strings for now. We'll have to do that in the future, and the longer I put it off, the more annoying it's going to be, but which is life. Must buy at 1. It's not called terrain board texture. And now I need to make sure that do it this way. So this will be the texture width. Width. Texture width is less than 0 or less than or equal to 0, or texture width. Easy way to check if it's a power of 2. Okay, thought that there was a function for that. False. Throw an error. And the reason it needs to be a power of 2 is just because that works better with graphics card. So, board texture width must positive it's greater than 0 and a power of tweak. And we'll do the same thing for the height. I can also place those long references with much cleaner. Okay, and also I need to check to make sure that all these textures are this width and height. I guess I should do that before I actually create the array, huh? So if texture width not equal texture width, or the height not equal, we're actually I'm gonna need the string for this for debugging, so compare texture to text, compare value texture with width or height. So another error. So texture not required dimensions. That would be fair key and width height. The key might not be very great for debugging, but we can always change that later. Okay, so now that we've got all the validation out of the way, we can move to actually creating everything. Already halfway there. And so we loop through the textures, and then we also need to loop through the bitmaps for each texture. Okay, yeah, let's just use the very first texture. So I guess we also need to force all these textures to have the same bitmap count. At that. Okay, it says generate bitmaps. Well, I don't know. Well, I guess I'll wait and see about that. If I need to know the bitmap count. If you're not familiar with bitmaps, they're kind of like pre-downsized version of textures that the game will use when a model is far away from the camera, and they tend to look a lot better than trying to downsize right away, or at render time, I should say. I'm not sure how we'd figure out how many bitmap. Well, okay, well this doesn't enforce that they all have the same bitmap, so I guess we can just go on a per texture basis. Okay, dot bitmap count. This will work. Okay, so how this copy texture works is it copies this texture at this array index and this bitmap into this other texture array, and so since this texture is not an array, you just always pass 0. But then we're copying it into the texture array at position t, and then we also give the bitmap index. All that does. And so that should create the texture array. Nice if we make it visible in the editor, but I'm not sure if that is possible. But I guess for now we'll just add it into the database. Okay, so now we need to go ahead and create shader. And we don't have a shader folder already. Oh, we already created the terrain shader. Okay, so it's pretty simple. Standard surface shader. Okay, and to use brain, well, I'll just like a cat-like coding. Take it down to the shader. So we want to change the main texture to a terrain texture array. Be about the same. And then here, to enable texture arrays on all platforms that support it, you have to increase the shader target level from 3.0 to 3.5, so we'll need that as well. A couple other things is you can't just use a sampler 2D for a texture array, and fortunately the code is different on each platform, but fortunately Unity has this nice macro you can use, so we'll just put that here, and then Unity will take care of setting all this up for each platform. And then also, yeah, we won't have a UV for these textures. We'll actually just use the world position. That's what that is doing here. Don't really need color because that's going to refer to the blending. But I'll leave it in there for now because we will use it later. We'll just have the world position. And I guess Unity is nice to figure that out for you because it doesn't look like you have to do anything else to get it. Okay, so here is his code to actually sample a texture array. Again, you have to use this macro for it, and we could just copy this code. Pretty simple. So we won't want that. And in order to still use this color as defined in the shader properties, we'll just change it here instead of it multiplying in this line. And just take one more look. Okay, so if you're not used to, I think that this typo right there, I should say o.albedo. But if you're not used to surface shader in Unity, it's really kind of some shader magic that Unity does. It will take this function and generate the actual vertex and fragment shaders, if you remember that from our 2D Lights project. And what this does, the albedo is basically just the color for a texture, and then metallic and smoothness pretty much do what they say. Then this is the alpha. So what we're doing here is we're sampling the texture 2D array, which is this main texture, and at the U and V, which is the texture's X, Y coordinates given by the world position. And since the terrain is laid out on the XZ plane, that's why we only use the XZ coordinates and ignore the Y. And then this is just some multiplier to kind of keep things looking good. We might change it. And then this third value here is what will determine the index of the texture array, the index of the texture in this texture array, and for now we're just going to use 0. So hopefully when we start the game, well, nothing will happen now because I need to have the code attach this our newly created texture array onto the shader. Code play link. So here where we have the chunk, get the mesh filter, we'll also need to get the material from this. I already created material. I have the terrain mesh material, which right now is just the terrain shader. So I'm not sure if I want to make sure that the materials don't, because sometimes if you edit a material, Unity will actually make a copy of it. But the problem with that is that every mesh that uses that material will now go into a different draw call, which will slow down your render pipeline or the render time. I'm trying to think of the best way to do this. We only have to do it once. Maybe if I just have a reference to the material up here, that'd be the safest. Private material. Let's just call this the terrain. Then terrain mesh change. We don't really have. Okay, well, I guess we'll just do it here, but it'd be better if we had some message that would tell us whenever the actual game database has loaded. Let's see what I call. I don't have to call it anything. It's just terrain scale dot main texture equals we don't have a reference to the game database, so I guess I better get that. Database terrain textures, and I think this should do the trick. Let's just try it out and see how far it gets. We did get an error. Expected texture 2D and asset dirt checkerboard and received null. Okay, so I must have done when I did this stuff. Maybe I. Yep. No, it still stores the asset here. That is strange because it says that the Texture 2D finished loading with success, no error. Do I need to have debug here saying depositing asset into this position? Guess it won't cause any problems. Storing asset in this would be the loader. Why did I do that? Set name and name and database. Okay, so let's see what this says. Maybe the texture names are getting messed up somehow. Oh, actually, I think I know what the problem is. But let's look and see. Yeah, so it's storing Dart checkerboard and test content. Yeah, because I think I forgot to get the key, so it's not adding the mod name at the front. So that was my fault. Here. So yeah, the key is actually Trying to find what this is called. Get texture right here. So I have to do, what is the function for that? Look in the normal asset organizer to see. Down here where we get our model. Yeah, right here. So mod files helper, asset key. We just needed to call this and it will create the asset key correctly. The reason we have to do that is because we need to prefix the mod name to the beginning in case two different assets in different mods have the same name, but they're actually different. What should... Where texture width must be greater than... Oh, okay, and then in the table of contents I forgot to add the board texture width and height. Hi Spy Legion, thanks for coming by. Now I forget how big I made the textures, so let's look and see. 48 by 48. I'm doing pretty good. How are you? Glad it's the weekend now. But I guess I shouldn't complain this week. It wasn't too bad, but... Good to hear it. Okay, so now we got all the way through to the game. I should get rid of this. I don't really need this right now, and it's plugging up the bug log. Now it's saying the variable terrain material and terrain mesh display link. Oh, of course. So in here, I didn't set this terrain material, so that's what that was complaining about. You have a question? Oh, sure. Go ahead and ask. Oh, look. Looks like it loaded fine. So now everything is just displaying the dirt texture because that's the first texture in the array. And we'll set it up for the stone texture soon. But we can see the checkerboard is tiling fine. We probably have the scale factor for this be editable by the mods, but we'll get to that later. Let me write a do for that. Some of the texture array. Allow mods to find the or the world position multiplier. And the terrain shader. Let me do that later. It won't be that difficult, but I don't want to get sidetracked. Alright, so the way that cat-like coding and the way that we do this next part is, so if I to this back to how it was, but before we had our terrain, we looked like this, where we had the red hexagons and then these triangles were gradients between three colors, and the red, green, and blue basically is going to tell the shader which terrain to blend between. The red being the first. Well, colors are stored in computer RGB, and so red is the first, and that's basically the amount of the first texture to use, and green's the second, and so on. But now we need to tell the shader exactly which textures correspond to these three colors, and we're going to use some extra UV extra UV values that you can specify per vertex. It has that built in, so it's actually not that difficult. Let me look at the question. You want to create something like password recovery in C#. Oh, when I try to call it form, it says the method doesn't contain definition of something. Okay. So you're making a program that's trying to do a password recovery, but then when you're trying to run it, it says that a method doesn't exist, but when you look in the code, it's definitely there. Can you post pictures? Sure. Yeah, my mod bot might block the image links, but I'll be able to see them. Alright. So we'll get back to this. It's actually not that difficult. Main thing we need to do, I'm gonna go ahead and write shader first. I'm trying to get to where they do it here. Okay, so we're gonna need to do two things. Another cool thing about the surface shaders in Unity is they allow you to specify your own vertex or fragment function if you want, and it will blend those into the ones that are automatically generated. To do that, you just specify vertex and then the name up here in this pragma line. And we're also going to need... Now we obviously have to write our own function. So this app.data_full is the default variable passed into the vertex function, and then this input is what we specify here. And so they initialize the output of this input variable. It's a little confusing. But and then they add the terrain, which is what we will specify here, using the second text chord, which is actually the third because they're 0 indexed, is what we're going to use to specify these terrain data. So we don't want to use the first two UVs because they're used for like the normal UVs and a normal map UVs, which we might use down the line, so I'm going to try and leave those open. And there's actually 4 UVs in here, so we have another extra one if we ever need it. Okay, I see your links. Let me look quick. Okay, read passwords. Over here so people can see what I'm going to talk about. So you have an interface that has an IEnumerable credential model, read passwords. That all looks fine to me. Yeah, but it definitely says that that doesn't exist. A couple things I could think of is if there's any other errors. Sometimes Visual Studio and Unity won't compile certain things, and so they won't see this method until the other errors are fixed so that it can compile everything else. Already did a list iPassReader equals new list, so you can declare it. Oh, okay, I see the problem. It's because you're trying to call the read passwords on the list and not each individual object in there. So the list doesn't have the read passwords method, it's actually the objects inside the list. So if you say, for example, readers index 0.read passwords, I think that would work. So I think that's your issue there. So just do a for loop in that try and say for each reader and readers reader.read passwords, and that should fix your problem. So let's get back to the shader here. Okay, so now we have the terrain variable, but we need to actually use it to specify this index. And again, Cat-like coding has some great code for that. So I'm going to theirs as a base. I mean, why rewrite what works? So we'll have this get terrain color, which is the normal function that you can have in the shader, and it will take the input world position xz multiplied by this, which will probably allow it to be editable later, and then also the in terrain index end. So UVW is just another way for XYZ except in UV space, and what this does is it takes the world position X and Z, multiplies by that, and puts it into the first two variables of this float 3, and then the index in the terrain is passed to the third variable and or the third index in the float array. And then we can use that to sample the texture array just like we did here, and then we'll return it times the color for this vertex, which is or wait, it'll be the color for this index, so either the color, which is the little I don't know bright red, green, and blue thing that I showed a second ago. And we can take, might be confused here because we're going to take the index of the color. You can just think of the color as an array, so basically if we pass 0 here, that means we want the red, and 1 would be blue, or 1 is actually green, and then 2 is blue. Thanks a lot, you'll try it. Oh, no problem. Yeah, everybody's got to learn somewhere, and your code looks pretty good, but yeah, interfaces can be confusing, so I'm not surprised. Well, thanks, Spy Legion. I will appreciate it if you follow me, and we'd love to have you here. Okay, so what they do now. Oh, I lost my spot again. Down here in this shader, so they have this get terrain color, and then they basically just have get terrain color in 0, 1, 2, and that corresponds to getting it for the red, green, and blue. So we'll do the same thing. We don't need these two these two lines because we moved them to this function here. And you might wonder why we're adding them together, and that's just because we're going to do additive blending. And because of the way that we did the colors and the lerping, this will also just be an average between them, so we don't have to do like divide by 3 or anything. And then we don't change any of this. I think this is good. Let's see if Unity complain about any of that code I just did. Okay, and if I play the game, we won't notice anything different because I haven't set those UV values yet. Although, oh, that's kind of weird, huh? Not sure what's causing that, but I'm not going to try to debug it right now because oh, you know what, actually, Did I not specify the text? Oh no, the text core 2 is part of this app data full, so that's already there. Sorry for knocking my mic. Okay, so I'm not going to try to debug this because we don't have good values in the text core 2 yet, so it could just be, I don't know, some leftover stuff that Unity didn't clear out. So if we go to our, gotta find the graphics mesh generator. So now we can finally add in those texture indexes. And it's pretty simple. So we'll need another list here for the textures. And we'll just do private vector 3, or it's a list actually. Terrains. No, I don't like that. Terrain indexes. Oh, and I don't need this hex points anymore, do I? Yeah, that was left over from before we did the blueprint. So I better make sure to clear this here. And let's see. It'd just be mesh 3 equals train indexes. Right. Yeah, so this wants a vector 2. But I know we can do vector 3s because UVs can go up to vector 4. So let's just use a different function. How do they handle it here? So all this code is where they're trying to figure out the colors. They've gotten a lot farther than we are right now before they try to do grain textures, so their triangulation is a lot more complicated. So they have this list here, so that's correct. They're adding it. Where do they add it to the mesh? What I'm trying to find out. Down here at the bottom. They went to the shader. Missed it. Well, I could have found it just by searching by now. Oh, here, I did miss it. Hex mesh. Okay, so we gotta use the set UV instead of this, setting it like that. I had a problem with the set UV method earlier, but it was probably because I didn't use this mesh clear first. We want the second, or is it the third set? Not sure if, okay, yeah, thought so. This is 0 indexed, so we want second set, and then we can pass in the grain indexes. Okay, so I guess I shouldn't have been so hasty to remove some of that block prototype code because we're going to need it again. Oh, but right now the block prototype doesn't know its grain index. Did I set that up already? Okay, I do. Texture index right there. So, really simple. Just every time we add a vertex, we've got to add the correct terrain index color to it. So this would just be So again, these colors specify like what amount of each texture to blend at this vertex. So the terrain index is, since this is just red, only the first terrain matters. And we'll add vector 3. Do the cell, prototype, terrain index, or texture index is called there. And then here we don't care, so we can just set it to 0. And so the main thing is that you have this color, or vector 3, for every vertex, and then you won't have any issues. Hey Pedazza Dorada, thanks for stopping by. Hope I pronounced that right. So I guess what I should do is on this add quad, I either need to pass along the texture index. Okay, well the thing about this is that every vertex in these quads and triangles should have this same vector 3. So I can just add one more variable at the end. Vector 3, terrain indexes, add terrain, and then I'll just, we added 4 vertices, I've got to add 4 terrain index arrays. Same thing here. Since we had 3 vertices for this triangle, we add 3 arrays. So you can notice here that we theoretically this could save a lot of space if we just saved these arrays per triangle, but there's no way to do that and let the shader access this data. The shader only knows vertices and pixels, it doesn't know triangles, so pronounce it right. Okay, good to hear. So here we use the red and green, and the red, which is first, is my cell color, and then green is the neighbor, so we can do my cell loop, what is it? Prototype. Texture index, and then the next one is the neighbor cell, prototype, texture index. Oh, and then I've got to pass 0 for the last one because there's no blue. Then in this triangle it actually does blend 3 textures, so I've got to add other cell, texture index. So now we let the shader know the 3 different textures to blend between for red, green, and blue. And I think that's about it. So hopefully when we play the game now, everything will just work. Not, I already fixed that. Filing. Object not set to reference. Did I forget to create the list? I bet. But it's saying the color blue doesn't exist. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Going on. I have the terrain index list there. Graphics mesh, make more. Object not set to a reference at line 115. It is right here. Oh, okay. So the thing is that some of these prototypes can be null if it's an edge. So there, I guess we'd want to use our own prototype So I think I need to make a helper function for that. So let's just call this get train index, and we'll pass sorry about that. We'll pass our own prototype and then also neighbor's prototype, or cell I should say. So we'll just call it main, and then we'll have like a fallback. So if main is in bounds false, then we'll use the fallback prototype texture index. Oh, I need to actually return an integer. Right, words here. It's getting late. This prototype texture index. Okay, so what we have to do is we know that this is always fine because if we were out of bounds, we wouldn't be calling this function for this cell. But our neighbors can be out of bounds, and so we need to call get train index for that. And we would just call our pass my cell and then the neighbor cell. Same thing down here, except for both of these indexes. Ooh, Ico, it's been a while since I've thought of that game. Alright, so let's see. Hopefully we won't get a null reference error. Okay, well, there's something. Mesh is out of bounds. The supplied array needs to be the same as the vertices array. And we're getting that strange mix. Well, that's probably just because the UVs weren't set again. Vertices. I added 4 vertices, so 4 indexes, 3 vertices, 3 indexes. The only other place I add a vertex. Oh, I forgot to add it here for the center point. Actually put this below the color just to have the same pattern. I load it again. Okay, let's see. Well, they're not blending, but at least we're getting dirt and stone colors. How come they're not blending though? Put the render count. 9 batches, why is that? Okay, I don't know. Might have something to do with the way Unity's handling it, but they all use the same material, so okay, let's actually look here and see if we can if it'll let us inspect this texture array. Okay, no, you can't actually. I was hoping it would let us actually see the textures, but nope. Okay, so it's kind of working. I mean, you can see that each hexagon knows what texture it's supposed to be, but for some reason they just seem to match the... Oh, I bet... Maybe I pass... I bet that this function is the issue. Oh yeah, I did these backwards. This cell should be the first, and then the neighbor should... I mean, the neighbor should be the first, and my cell is supposed to be the fallback. Believe me? So what was happening there is that I was just always using my cell's color, which is never out of bounds, so it was never going to the fallback. But now here it should work correctly and color blending. Oh, there we go. What's going on here? There's still some issues. It's weird, there's just like this one. Oh, it's upside down. Is that the... No, that you can still see that edge. That's not blending. Does that have to do because it's not the edge of the chunk? I think it might. Yeah, if we move this away, we can see the area where it's not blending matches the chunk border. Is that? You can see this crisp edge here, but then it blends the rest of the thing. Oh, okay. The issue is because we can't use is in bounds because sometimes... Yes, this is in bounds actually does not. Yeah, I should rename this to is in chunk, not is in bounds. Because the chunk borders can actually be real tiles that actually are on the map, but they're just not in our chunk, so we don't want to generate them up here. Yeah, so I was trying to get smart here. What we actually need to do is see if main surface prototype is null, which means that it's out of bounds of the actual board and not just the chunk. Okay, so now we hopefully won't get those crisp edges there. Alright, that looks much better. Alright. Okay, so obviously the game still has quite a lot to go until we get actually good looking textures, but we've definitely got the groundwork set. You can see everything tiles nicely, even where it blends. The checkerboard, I set up the checkerboard so that we would be able to tell exactly if these UVs get mismatched, but no, it's working great. Let's look on our to-do list. That is good. Okay, so we'll do this real quick. But we're pretty much done with color maps, and then I need to investigate this and see exactly how many textures we can actually have in the array before Unity will complain to us. Because we don't, like, if it can only allow 8 textures, I think that's probably too small. But if it can allow like 32, then that might be okay. So yeah, I'll need to look into that. And then next we'll move on to height maps, which will try to add actual dimension to these flat tops using a 2D texture, and they'll also blend nicely. And then got cliffs, which I gotta decide on exactly how I want to do. And the noise and variation is basically, we'll have slight differences in elevation and also make the hexagons not look quite so regular. Then models on top and water, of course. But yeah, we made great progress today, so I'm really happy about that. But unfortunately, that's it for me for tonight and the week. So I'll be back Monday at around 8:30 Eastern, and we'll stream for about 2 hours like normal. If you missed any stream and you'd like to catch up, I do have a YouTube channel. You can check that out to see all previous streams. If you want to be notified when I go live on Monday, feel free to follow me here on Twitch or on my Twitter, which I will post there when I go live. And also I have a Discord channel if you'd like to chat with me and other viewers during the day. We'd really love to have you there. And you can reach any of these places by typing !Discord or YouTube or Twitter into my chat, or checking out the channel or video description, and they'll be there. And that's it for me for tonight. Again, thanks everybody for coming by, and I hope you have a great weekend. Alright, bye bye.